Greetings, hi, the War Owl greets you, and welcome to How to Play Counter-Strike Global Offensive. This time, I'm going to be covering the AWP, a weapon so renowned that an entire player role, the AWPer, is defined by it. First, I'll go over what the AWP is, and then how to use it. The AWP is a feared and respected weapon in Counter-Strike. Its mere existence changes how players navigate the map. It is a situational weapon, meaning it's only used at certain times and places on the map. And although it's incredibly expensive and powerful, you will often see players drop it for an AK or an M4 if the situation changes. The AWP is Counter-Strike's sniper rifle. It has 2 zoom settings, is incredibly accurate at long range while not moving, and most importantly, it's a one-hit kill to the head, chest, arms, and body. That's head, shoulders, knees, and, well, not toes. It doesn't kill you there. It doesn't kill you in the legs. That's called legging an opponent. You shoot them in the legs and they survive with an AWP. Specialized players spend immeasurable amounts of time mastering the weapon to display incredible feats of skill, pinpoint accuracy, and death in one fast twitch. The AWP has 10 rounds in a magazine and a very low rate of fire. It's a bolt-action weapon, so the character has to manually load each round into the chamber. You normally will not find yourself reloading the weapon, since the situations you find yourself in will make it so that if you hit the enemy, they're dead, and if you miss the enemy, you're dead. It costs $4,750 and is available on both teams. It's incredibly expensive, the second most expensive weapon that's actually used in competitive. If you see one on the ground and the round is over, pick it up. Even if you're not going to use it, chances are there's an AWPer on your team that will greatly appreciate it and give you a weapon of their own. It is a team game after all. You win as a team, you lose as a team. Your own kill-death ratio, your money, means nothing. Sounds overpowered, right? Well, it has weaknesses that balance it out, being the cost, the rate of fire, the speed the player moves while holding it, having to right-click to scope the weapon, which takes time, and the fact that the scope obscures the target. At closer distances and in clutch situations, most players will prefer the AK-47 or an M4, since you can fire multiple rounds with it. Some players even prefer a pistol at the closer distances. So how do you use it? There are a number of different ways to fire the weapon. The first is ambushing your target. Scope in the weapon by right-clicking. Place the crosshair at the entrance where you think a player is going to appear. And now, we wait. This normally takes great patience, a quality that great AWPers must possess. Normally, you will only use the first scope distance, but if you're playing at a long-range position, you might double scope. When the enemy comes around the corner, simply press the left mouse button to smite them down. You may have to move the mouse with them if they jump around the corner or run out into the room. Just make sure you hit the enemy before they stop moving, because if they stop moving or change directions, they will be able to fire accurately at you. This is most useful in a defensive position at longer distances when the enemy can only come from one place. There's a situational aspect of the weapon. That situation surprisingly comes up a lot though. The next way to fire the AWP is to no-scope. You can figure out what this means pretty much by the name. It's firing the weapon without scoping in. Derp. When you are not scoped, the weapon is incredibly inaccurate, making this technique only useful at close distances. And even then, you're probably going to miss. While normally it is kind of a trick shot, it can also be useful when forced into a confrontation. If a player charges you at close range and you don't have time to scope in or pull out your pistol, you may be forced to try and no-scope the enemy as a last-ditch effort of survival. Like a dog cornered and the bear coming at him and he goes, "Roar," and the bear gets scared off, you know what I mean. When you pull it off, it's incredibly satisfying. The next way to fire the AWP is to, and pardon the term, quickscope. Sorry, that term is used in Call of Duty, a far inferior gaming series. But I guess the same concept applies because the AWP is inaccurate when no-scoping. It doesn't make sense to draw a dot on your screen and just no-scope all day. Doesn't work in CSGO. You're gonna have to scope in to get frags. This technique is used when playing with the AWP offensively. So instead of just waiting around a corner for someone, you are the one peeking. The AWP, like every other firearm in the game, is inaccurate when moving. The scope indicates how inaccurate you are by being blurred. There's a slight bob as you walk as well. Only fire the weapon when there is no blur so that your shot is accurate. When you're moving, you have to come to a complete stop to fire an accurate shot. This technique is accomplished in 4 steps. 1. Stop moving. 2. Scope. 3. Flick the crosshair to the enemy. And 4. click the left mouse button to fire. That's stop, scope, flick, fire. Seems like it would take you a long time to accomplish this, lots of little steps going on there in millisecond times, but yeah, the more time that it would take for the other guy to just shoot you, right? You must perform these steps in one sweeping motion. This involves keys on the keyboard, the right mouse button, moving the mouse, and the left mouse button. That's literally every way you have to interact with the game, in a specific order, in one motion, in sub-second times. This is why AWPing is so revered, why players specialize in its use, why it takes a great player to master it, and only a few people in the history of the game have. But don't worry, there's shortcuts. The first is pre-shooting, which I've covered in another tutorial. When you go around a corner, you decide, using your game sense, where you're going to fire beforehand. Then, you just execute your stop, scope, flick, fire without having to think of the target or without having to use your eyes. If you don't know what the heck I'm talking about, check out my pre-shooting tutorial for a more in-depth look at this. The next shortcut is to scope beforehand and then just strafe out while scoped and stop so that the cursor lands where you think the enemy might be. You can use these faster techniques when everything goes according to plan, when you peek specific spots where the enemies tend to be, but things don't always go according to plan. In fact, they rarely do. So if you plan to use the AWP in any capacity, you must train. Stop, scope, flick, fire. To get your flicks down pat, you have the ability to change your sensitivity of being scoped. The command is zoom_sensitivity_ratio_mouse. A value of 1 will be the sensitivity of your unscoped view, which is what I would recommend. However, if you feel confident enough in your AWPing that you think you can tweak this to some effect and help you out, go for it. Experiment. Have fun. Lots of guys like to experiment with all the settings. I suggest you do, just if you feel like it. When you shoot the AWP, there is a period of time before it can fire again. This period of time is critical to both using the AWP and countering it. You need to know when you'll be able to fire again or when the enemy will be able to fire again. So you need to develop an internal clock for this specific period of time. You should never be visible to your opponent when you can't fire. If you miss your shot, you'll need to strafe out of the line of fire or take evasive action. Take evasive action before you can fire again. When you are going up against an AWPer and they miss their first shot, you know the exact amount of time before they can fire again. This is critical for you to change positions, to get behind cover, push forward and take a new position, or my favorite, to just pre-shoot the spot where you know the AWPer is going to peek again at the exact time. Just time it right. The AWPer is going to pop out when they think they're going to be able to fire again, and you're going to boom headshot them as soon as they peek. Be careful. You can get accused of hacking very easily if you use this technique. And Overwatch is on 16 ticks, so be careful, kids, because you'll be reacting faster than human reaction time. Because the AWP isn't useful at close distances, it is prudent to purchase a useful pistol, such as the P250, the auto pistol, which is the CZ, or the 5.7, to use as a sidearm. That way, when you're forced to engage in close range or against multiple opponents, you can just use the pistol. To counter an AWP, it's best to know the positions where AWPers tend to be, then to strategically use your nades to make their positions useless. Smoke grenades are a perfect way to prevent an AWPer from using a specific section of the map. However, be forewarned, a good AWPer will still be able to shoot where you probably are through the smoke. A flashbang is a perfect way to counter an AWPer, if you're able to make it go off before they can look away. If you're able to scare an AWPer off with a flashbang, they will most likely concede the position you are trying to take. Once you get an AWPer in a position where they are not at the advantage, it's a simple matter of shooting them in the face. Well, that's it for now on the AWP. I strongly suggest you take the techniques in this video and practice them in-game. Every player should know how to use the AWP and how to counter it. If you feel like you want to play the role of an AWPer, which is a very useful talent we have, you're going to have to put in a considerable amount of practice with the weapon. Thanks for watching, happy AWPing. I'm the War Owl, and I still have no closer.